They laughed behind closed doors because they thought you didn't know any better. They mistook your silence for stupidity. They saw you standing alone and assumed you had nothing to offer. But here's the part that's tearing them up now. While they were busy performing for attention, you were busy evolving in the shadows. While they were putting on masks, you were building a mind so sharp it could slice through any illusion. And now those same mouths that mocked you can't stop whispering your name. Not because they care about you, but because they fear what you know. The energy around you has changed. You can feel it. It's in the long pauses when people speak to you. It's in the sudden stares that shift when you enter a room. It's in the way they smile, but their eyes can't hide the nervousness. Something about you has started unsettling the very people who once thought they had you figured out. And the truth is, they didn't just misread you. They underestimated you to a deadly degree. Now, they're realizing you weren't quiet because you lacked intelligence. You were quiet because you were calculating, watching, absorbing, storing every word they thought you didn't hear, and remembering every insult they believed you were too soft to understand. If this is already hitting, press the like button and subscribe, because this message isn't just content, it's payback in poetic form. Every chosen one who's been overlooked deserves to hear this. Thank you for being part of this mission. When you support this voice, you're strengthening all of ours. And now we turn the heat up. These people, let's call them what they are, performers in their own show, obsessed with image, addicted to validation, and terrified of exposure. They thrive on appearances, not depth. They're playing chess with plastic pieces while you've mastered an entirely different board. You don't need attention. You don't need approval. You walk into rooms with calm power because you already know something they don't. Real intelligence doesn't have to announce itself. It's felt. And right now, they're feeling it in every room you step into. A report from Harvard once explained that people with high emotional intelligence often appear quietly powerful. They may not dominate conversations, but they control them with presence. Sound familiar? That's you. And it's making the shallow thinkers shake. They can't compete with someone who doesn't play the same shallow game. Remember when they used to say, "You think too much"? That wasn't criticism. It was confession. They were admitting they couldn't think on your level. You made them uncomfortable simply by existing. You made them feel exposed without saying a word. And now, those same people are checking their own thoughts before they speak your name. Not out of guilt, out of fear. Because they've finally realized that beneath your calm face was a memory that remembers everything, a mind that pieces together patterns they never noticed, and an intuition that calls out lies like clockwork. You've become a storm they didn't see coming. I'll give you a story because you've earned one. There was once a man who worked in a place where everyone thought he was slow. He was quiet, never spoke in meetings, and just observed. People gossiped that he didn't get it, but behind the scenes, he was documenting every problem, every flaw, every inconsistency. Months later, during a crisis no one could fix, this man walked into the meeting, laid out a full solution, named every overlooked error, and saved the entire operation. You could hear a pin drop. That man, he wasn't slow, he was surgical. And after that day, nobody dared underestimate him again. That's the level of shift you've created. You didn't just shock them with intelligence. You embarrassed them with how wrong they were about you. You let them build their illusions while you sharpened your mind in silence. You let them throw the parties while you read the patterns. Now you walk with the weight of truth, and they're stuck trying to rewrite history. This isn't just revenge. This is evolution. You didn't fight for attention. You became too undeniable to ignore. Your intelligence speaks in your posture, in your boundaries, in your decisions. You learned when to speak, when to watch and when to walk away. That's strategy. That's power. That's why they whisper now. Because the person they mocked is now the person they can't touch. So the next time you hear your name being passed around like hot gossip, smile. That's not slander, it's surrender. They're acknowledging what they never wanted to believe, that you're not to be played with, that you're not to be underestimated, that you've become the thing they never saw coming, a quiet force with a terrifying level of intelligence. And the best part, you're just getting started. And listen closely, chosen one, this isn't just another message. This is your confirmation. The whispers, the stares, the shift in energy when you walk in. It's all real. They're talking about your mind now. They finally caught on. And it's got them nervous. So before we move forward, drop the number 777 in the comments if you've ever been doubted, overlooked, or called too quiet. Because now they know your silence was strategy. Your intelligence is the part they never saw coming. And if you're still here, it means you're built different. It means you're ready to walk through this, step by step, and hear the truth that only someone on your level can understand. This next part, it's where everything starts to click. If you're really one of the ones they warned each other about, stay with me till the very end. Let the world keep gossiping, because we're about to break down exactly why they're scared to challenge you now. Let's get into it. Number 1, they laughed because you didn't study like them. Now they're shaking because you see what they'll never understand. The loudest ones in the room mocked your silence until they realized you were decoding the whole system with your eyes closed. They used to smirk when you didn't raise your hand. They used to chuckle when you didn't quote their favorite thinkers or reference their elite books. They thought silence meant ignorance, that not participating in their race meant you weren't fast enough to run it. But now their voices are trembling and their eyes keep cutting sideways because something about you unsettles the entire room without you having to say a word. And when you finally do speak, it doesn't sound like something you read. It sounds like something you remembered. That's what's eating at them. You weren't taught. You didn't borrow your wisdom. You came with it. They can't trace your brilliance back to their institutions, and that's the real threat. You didn't come up through their broken pipelines. You're not their product. You're a wild variable, an uncontrollable force that didn't ask for permission to be extraordinary. That terrifies people who live off labels and credentials. They thought if they controlled the books, the classrooms, the stages, they could control the minds. But then you showed up, untrained, unfiltered, and undeniably sharp. And every word you spoke bent the room, exposed the lies, and reminded them that intelligence doesn't come from systems. It survives in spite of them. Let's make something clear. This isn't about pride. It's about reality. You learned to navigate by sensing. You figured things out by absorbing energy, reading the unspoken, connecting dots faster than logic allows. That's not something they can teach, and because they can't replicate it, they resent it. They call it weird. They call it unnatural. But what they really mean is, it threatens everything they've built on pretense and performance. See, they spent their whole lives trying to become what the world told them was smart. You just were. You didn't need a podium to speak truth. You didn't need applause to confirm you were right. While they studied to impress, you watched to understand. While they rehearsed answers, you listened for patterns. While they memorized facts, you felt reality shift through intuition. They were building sandcastles in their own minds. You were already seeing the whole coastline. Why do they hate me for being smart? That might have crossed your mind before, but it's not just your intelligence that triggers them. It's how you got it. Because it reminds them that their achievements aren't the only path to understanding. You didn't climb their ladder. You built your own tower in silence. and now it casts a long shadow across everything they thought made them special. You became a mirror they can't avoid, and in that reflection, they don't see you. They see what they lack. They see the cracks in their confidence. They hear the hollowness in their arguments. They feel the insecurity creep in when you speak without effort, and everyone listens. That's why the gossip started. That's why they whisper your name like a warning, because you're not just smart, you're undeniably accurate. Your insights expose the rot. Your words make noise without raising your voice. There's a deeper truth here that most won't admit. Some people hate you because you prove that intelligence isn't something they own. It's something the universe distributes freely to those who are awake. And, chosen one, you've been awake longer than you even knew. That's what scares them the most. You didn't even try to outsmart them. You simply existed, and your presence disrupted the illusion. Let's not forget how they tried to box you in. Remember when they mocked your curiosity, laughed at how you saw things differently, tried to label you as too sensitive, too intense, or too deep? That wasn't judgment, that was projection. They were trying to contain what they couldn't comprehend. But your mind isn't a cage, it's a compass, and it never needed their direction. It made its own map. Metaphorically, you are a storm that didn't come from the sky. You rose from the ground they thought was solid, quiet, steady, building power while they danced in the sun. Now the clouds are here, and they realize you were never behind. You were beneath them, shaking the foundation. The same people who overlooked you are now asking questions in private rooms. How did they know that? Why does everything they say end up being right? Who taught them this? Nobody did. You remembered. Because true intelligence isn't something you cram. It's something that wakes up. It's encoded in your soul. It's what made you ask questions when others blindly followed. It's what made you uncomfortable in crowds that celebrated ignorance. It's what made you restless in systems designed to suppress awareness. And that's exactly why they feared you then and worship you now in silence. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them spin stories trying to explain you. Their confusion is confirmation. Their fear is proof. And their gossip, that's the price of being unforgettable. They're right to be nervous, because the most dangerous kind of intelligent person is the one who never needed to be taught, and that's you. Number 2, they used to play you like a fool. Now they're scared to breathe wrong around you. You don't need to expose them with words. Your silence is already a verdict. They used to toy with your emotions like it was a game. Sweet words laced with hidden motives, smiles that hid sharp intentions, and those little guilt trips dressed up as love. They thought they could still pull the same strings. But now, those strings are cut. You no longer react like you used to. No more jumping to defend yourself. No more falling into the trap of explaining things to people who were never listening. Now, you just look. You observe. You see through it. And you move accordingly. That's what terrifies them. Because a manipulator's power depends on your confusion. But you've traded confusion for clarity. And that clarity has made you untouchable. A manipulator's worst nightmare is someone who no longer needs their approval to feel peace. They whisper about you now. Don't play games with that one. They see everything. The truth is, you do. You see the lie before it's spoken. You feel the shift in tone before the sentence ends. You know when a smile is forced, when an apology is strategic, when a compliment is a setup. It's like your brain is 10 steps ahead, but it's not just logic. It's instinct, sharpened by experience. The wounds of your past have become sensors. The betrayal you once cried over is now your built-in firewall. You didn't just learn from the pain, you upgraded because of it. You didn't build walls. You built X-ray vision. Imagine a chess master watching someone try to cheat at checkers. That's how ridiculous these people look to you now. They walk in with fake praise, subtle digs, emotional bait, and they expect you not to notice. But you don't just notice, you calculate. You've learned how to read energy like body language. You can sit through a conversation and walk away knowing who's real, who's lying, and who's trying to set you up. And the scariest part for them, you don't say anything. You don't need to, because your silence speaks louder than their performances ever could. You didn't become cold, you became conscious. You didn't stop loving people, you just stopped giving power to the ones who only knew how to drain it. And now they're confused. They're replaying your responses in their heads. Why didn't they react? Why didn't they fight back? Did they know what I was trying to do? Yes, you knew. You knew from the first word they spoke. You just chose to let them dig their own hole this time. You didn't stop being trusting. You started being discerning. Imagine someone trying to sell you poison in a pretty bottle over and over, and one day you stop drinking it. They panic, not because the poison stopped working, but because you stopped believing in the label. That's what your growth looks like. You've stripped the labels off people and started reading what's really inside. And now they can't manipulate you because you no longer need their version of the truth. You trust your own. This is the level they never prepared for, a version of you that doesn't argue, doesn't over-explain, doesn't react emotionally. You respond strategically. That alone disarms the manipulators. They want chaos. They want confusion. But when you bring calm to the table, when you speak with clarity, it paralyzes their entire agenda. They can't win a game you're no longer playing. They underestimated how dangerous peace is. Real peace, the kind that comes from knowing yourself, is a threat to anyone who only knew how to control the broken version of you. And now they're scrambling. They're warning others. They're telling people not to mess with you, not because you're mean or cruel, but because you're clear. And clarity destroys manipulation. It cuts through fog like a blade. It exposes everything they tried to keep hidden. You've become a mental fortress, not closed off, but protected. You still love deeply, but you no longer do it blindly. You still care, but you don't chase. You still give, but not to those who demand without offering a thing in return. And that shift, that quiet, unapologetic shift, has made you a legend in the rooms you left behind. Imagine being in a room where everyone once felt they had control over you until you stopped playing along. The silence that follows, that's the funeral of their power, and that's exactly what they're sitting in now. A quiet tension every time your name comes up. A nervous laugh when someone asks, "Have you heard from them?" They haven't, and they won't. Because you outgrew the need to prove anything to people who never wanted to understand you in the first place. So if you've ever wondered why the gossip changed, this is why. It's not about your looks, your money, or your style. It's about your mind. It's about the way you see. It's about the fact that nothing gets past you anymore. And that kind of intelligence can't be faked, taught, or manipulated. Let them talk. Let them try to figure you out. The truth is, you're not the same person they used to play with. You don't flinch. You don't fold. You observe and move. That's power. And now they're the ones walking on eggshells, terrified of what you might say, or worse, what you've already seen and kept to yourself. The game is over. You didn't just beat it. You walked away from the board entirely, with your crown still on. Number 3. They thought you were lost, but you were just quietly winning. Real power doesn't announce itself. It studies, calculates, and then makes a move you'll never recover from. They called you passive, said you were too slow, too indecisive, too quiet. But what they didn't understand is that stillness doesn't mean weakness. It means preparation. You weren't lost. You weren't behind. You were 5 steps ahead, waiting for them to play themselves while you walked around the trap they set. And now, they're choking on their own assumptions, because the same person they once dismissed is the one everyone's now warning each other about. They don't brag, but everything they touch turns out exactly how they planned it. That's the new rumor, and it's not because you showed off. You didn't need to. Your life started reflecting every move you made in silence. While others posted their progress, you built yours, quietly, strategically, intentionally. And when your results started speaking louder than their noise, it hit them. You were never clueless. You were calculating. You were picking your battles with surgical precision, letting fools self-destruct while you stayed 3 exits ahead. Imagine playing checkers with someone who's silently playing chess in their mind the entire time. You didn't become this way by chance. The universe trained you. Betrayals taught you timing. Gaslighting taught you to read patterns. Every fake friend taught you something real, how to trust your gut, not their words. Now, you don't just listen to what people say, you listen to the reason they're saying it. You feel the tone, you scan the timing, you sense the manipulation before it even finishes forming. That's not paranoia, that's evolved awareness. People gossip about your calm now. They say you're scary, that you move like you've already seen how it ends. And they're right, you have. Because when you've been burned enough times, your instincts don't just protect you, they predict. You don't fight battles anymore. You avoid them before they even begin. That's what really unsettles them. You don't brag, you don't react, and yet everything still goes your way. Because you're not loud, you're lethal in silence. Number 4, they got the degrees, you got the discernment. Some were taught to read books. You were born reading people. They sat in classrooms learning theories. You sat in silence decoding reality. They framed diplomas on their walls. You framed lessons in your mind, ones they'll never find in a syllabus. That's the part they'll never admit. You've always seen through people faster than they could finish a sentence, and you didn't need credentials to do it. You were built with that radar. While they rely on data, you rely on depth. While they need proof, you feel truth. You don't memorize information. You interpret energy. They can't understand it. How you catch a lie wrapped in charm. How you feel the shift in a room the second someone walks in fake. How you listen to what wasn't said and make sense of it. They want to know who taught you that. The answer? Pain, repetition, patterns. You didn't learn through lectures. You learned through experience, through betrayal, through moments where the words didn't match the vibe and your instincts screamed louder than logic. Imagine walking into a room full of masked smiles and knowing instantly who's real and who's rehearsed. You were never meant to be conventional. And that's what bothers them, because your type of intelligence isn't measured by grades, it's measured by survival. You didn't just pass tests, you passed through storms. You read manipulation before it formed. You decoded agendas while they were still figuring out the conversation. And that kind of insight, it can't be taught. It's lived, it's felt. You're not trying to be better than them, you're just different. You don't compete with their achievements. You outsense their intentions. That's why they gossip. That's why they call you dangerous. Because you don't need long explanations to know what's going on. You catch energy shifts, micro-expressions, inconsistencies, in seconds. You were never waiting for someone to validate your intelligence. You've been living it, uninterrupted, long before anyone noticed. You don't need to expose anyone. Your understanding makes their lies collapse on their own. That's the power of your mind. Quiet, raw, unshakable. Number 5, you walk in the room and the whole illusion starts crumbling. They built a system on lies, then panicked when you showed up with truth in your energy. You don't have to lift your voice. You don't even have to say a word. The moment you walk into certain rooms, the air changes. The tension rises. People sit a little straighter, talk a little faster, and watch you out of the corner of their eye. Not because you're loud or flashy, but because your very existence threatens their entire structure. You're calm, grounded, unapologetically real. And that alone exposes everything fake in the room. You didn't break the rules. They just realized you were never playing their game. They crafted systems full of power plays and favoritism, environments where manipulation thrived and authority was faked through control. And then you walked in, clear-headed, emotionally untouchable, and unwilling to pretend. You didn't challenge them with words. You challenged them by being yourself, by not needing their approval, by not bowing to invisible hierarchies. That's what rattles them. You don't respond to pressure the way they hoped you would. You don't fall in line, you redraw the line. Imagine walking into a rigged game and everyone realizing you brought your own deck. You refuse to pretend, and that makes pretenders sweat. You refuse to submit, and that makes false authority crumble. They used to think confidence came from position, but your presence proved something deeper. True power doesn't need permission. It doesn't need titles or applause. It just is. And when you show up in that power, calm, clear, authentic, everything artificial around you starts glitching. You make people question things they were taught never to challenge. Why are we following that person? Why does this rule even exist? Why do we pretend this is normal? You don't have to start the conversation. Your existence starts it. Because you're not confused like they are. You see through the mask, and that makes everyone wearing one feel naked. You weren't designed to fit the system. You were born to short-circuit it. That's why they gossip. That's why they avoid direct confrontation. Because you're not the enemy they're used to. You're the mirror they fear. And the truth is, you don't even have to fight for change. You are the change, just by standing still. Number 6. You let them talk themselves into a trap while you sat back and watched. They thought you were quiet because you didn't know. Turns out, you were quiet because you already did. You've mastered the art of playing slow in rooms filled with loud egos. You let them have the spotlight, the floor, the last word, because you were never there to impress. You were there to study. You watched how they moved. You paid attention to their tone shifts, their contradictions, the way they twisted intelligence into performance. While they faked confidence, you gathered data. While they flexed, you focused. You weren't being silent. You were gathering receipts. They don't know what to do with you now, because the person they once thought was clueless is the same one who clocked their every move. You let them talk. You let them gloat. You gave them the rope, and they tied the knot themselves. And when the moment came to speak, you didn't raise your voice. You raised the standard. And suddenly, the whole room realized you'd been holding the answers the entire time. Imagine pretending to be the smartest in the room, only to realize the quietest one was dissecting every lie you told. That's what's happening now. The performers are exposed, the manipulators are twitching, the loudest voices are being silenced, not by force, but by facts. You didn't argue. You didn't beg for space. You let them believe you were beneath them, and that's what makes the truth sting so deep now. You flipped the entire power dynamic without lifting a finger. You were never the fool. You just knew that real intelligence doesn't scream. It strikes when it's time. You understood something they never could. People reveal more when they think you're not a threat. So you became the ghost in the room, the one they ignored until it was too late. Silence is the most strategic move in a room full of actors. Now they walk different around you, careful, hesitant, because they don't know what you caught. They don't know what you remember, but they feel it. Your silence wasn't empty, it was loaded. And now you're the one they don't dare underestimate again. Number 7. They can't beat you in logic because you're not playing that game at all. While they rely on facts to argue, you rely on truth to know, and that's what scares them. Most people are trained to think in straight lines, cause and effect, logic and proof. They believe if something can't be explained, it must not be real. But you don't operate like that. Your clarity doesn't come from calculations. It comes from connection. You don't just think, you align. And when everything inside you clicks into place, no debate, no theory, no degree can outshine what you feel to be true. You don't read the surface, you read the current beneath it. You sense what's off before it even happens. You can feel when someone's words are polished, but their energy is panicking. You know when a smile is hiding tension. You pick up on timing, hesitation, tone, the silent red flags others miss. People try to rationalize your instincts, but they can't. Because you're not pulling from logic, you're pulling from alignment. And alignment gives you access to knowing they can't touch. Imagine walking into a room and knowing the truth without needing a single receipt. That's you. You walk in it. You don't chase it. You don't need all the facts lined up in a row. You are the clarity people try to mimic. That's why when you speak, everything gets quiet. Not because you raise your voice, but because your words carry the weight of something deeper than intellect. You don't guess, you know, and even when you can't explain it, the truth still lands, and it lands hard. They try to argue with you, but it never works. Not because you win, but because their logic feels hollow next to your awareness. That's why they mock intuition in public, but try to copy it in private. Because what you have can't be taught or Googled. It's internal, it's ancient, it's felt. You don't just speak truth, you radiate it, and that can't be debated. They don't fear your mind alone. They fear the force that flows through it, the quiet knowing that cuts through every lie before it even forms. And you just stay aligned and let everything false fall away. Number 8. You dethroned their star player without even trying. You didn't destroy their pride. You exposed how fragile it really was. Every circle has one, the self-proclaimed genius, the loud one everyone defers to, the one who talks over people and hides behind big words, the one who's never been challenged until you walked in. You didn't show up to compete. You weren't trying to prove anything, but when they tested you, when they tried to size you up, you didn't flinch. You answered, calmly, directly, and with a precision that shook the entire foundation of their little power pyramid. The moment you spoke, their smartest person started looking like a well-trained parrot. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't mock them. You didn't even try to correct them. You just spoke from truth. And truth doesn't need a stage. It creates one. The words you delivered didn't cut like insults. They cut like facts. And everyone felt it. Not just in their ears, but in their gut. Because you didn't just say something, they realized something. The brilliance they had been applauding was actually performance, memorized, exaggerated, and empty underneath. You didn't defeat a person, you deflated an illusion. Imagine a spotlight turning into a flashlight and revealing it was all smoke and mirrors. That's why they're gossiping now, not because you were rude, not because you came in swinging, but because you existed as a quiet contradiction to everything they celebrated. You didn't act smarter, you simply were, and the contrast made everything fake shrivel up in embarrassment. They call it intimidation, but it's actually just exposure. You made them see what they didn't want to admit. Their top player wasn't untouchable, just untested. Now they whisper about how it happened. They didn't raise their voice, they didn't insult, but somehow they shifted the whole room, and that's the part that scares them, because you didn't need a stage to win. You didn't need applause or backup. You just needed the truth. And when truth enters a room full of ego, it doesn't have to shout. It just sits there, unmoved, while everything fake scrambles for cover. Number 9. They thought you were a know-it-all, but you were just feeling what they refused to face. You didn't speak to impress. You spoke to reflect, and that's what rattled their soul. You've never needed to be the loudest in the room. You don't interrupt. You don't argue to win. You listen, not to respond, but to understand. And when you do speak, it lands differently. It doesn't just hit the mind, it hits the heart. Because you're not coming from ego. You're coming from alignment, from depth, from the kind of intelligence they don't teach. You can only live it. You don't walk into a room to show you're smart. You walk in and feel what's not being said. That's what unsettles them. You can spot sadness in a forced laugh. You hear fear behind the sarcasm. You feel the crack in the voice, even when the words sound fine. And when you speak, it's not analysis, it's discernment. They don't know how to explain how you always seem to just know, but they feel it. And it makes people uncomfortable, especially those hiding behind fake confidence and loud distractions. Imagine someone looking right at you and seeing the truth you've buried, even from yourself. That's what you are to people. A mirror, not because you expose them, but because you feel them. And most folks aren't ready for that level of raw reflection. It makes them defensive. That's why some label you a know-it-all. Not because you act superior, but because you remind them of what they've been avoiding. You don't lead with facts. You lead with truth, mixed with care. That's a combination you can't fake. It's not just intelligence. It's not just intuition. It's integrity. And when all of those meet in one person, it makes shallow people squirm. Because you're not playing mental games. You're delivering clarity with compassion, and that kind of energy doesn't just stand out, it stands above. You're not trying to be right, you're trying to be real, and that's what makes you unforgettable. You don't need to dominate the room. Your presence already reveals more than their words ever could. Number 10. You break their illusions just by existing, no words needed. You didn't yell, correct, or debate. You just existed, and suddenly their whole narrative didn't make sense anymore. You don't need a pulpit or a spotlight to shift minds. You don't need a long speech to wake someone up. Sometimes all it takes is your presence. A pause, a look, a silence that says more than 1,000 lectures ever could. You don't come to fix people, but when they leave your presence, something inside them has been unhooked. The illusion they were clinging to. It doesn't feel so solid anymore. Your silence doesn't just speak, it undoes. People remember you, and not because you made a scene. They remember the moment you made them think deeper, without even trying. You asked one simple question, and they haven't stopped thinking about it since. You gave one glance, and it cracked the mask they thought no one could see through. You didn't preach, you didn't pressure, you just were. And that alone shifted the atmosphere. Imagine someone stepping into your life, not to change it, but to awaken what was already there. That's what you do, not with force, with frequency. You carry an awareness that exposes lies without calling them out. You walk into a room, and suddenly people feel naked, not physically, but mentally. The games they play, the false identities they hold, the mental traps they cling to, all start shaking, because your mind doesn't operate on illusions. And when someone lives in truth, everyone still living in fiction feels it like an earthquake. You don't chase recognition, but your name travels. Why? Because people walk away from you different. They can't explain it. They can't always articulate it, but they know something shifted, something woke up, something got freed. You don't lead people, you unlock them, quietly, cleanly, permanently. They may not thank you, they may even distance themselves afterward, because not everyone is ready to face what you mirrored back. But deep down, they know. You broke something they couldn't break on their own, and you did it without ever needing to raise your voice. Number 11. You let them finish the lie, then file it away like evidence. They thought you were quiet because you believed them, but you were just giving them enough space to bury themselves. You've learned how to hear the truth hiding behind every lie, and you don't even need the whole sentence. The shift in their voice, the slight delay before a response, the fake calm they use to smooth over chaos. It all exposes more than they realize. And while they're rambling, trying to convince you, you're already done listening. You've already seen through it. You don't need proof when their energy is already testifying against them. You don't interrupt, you don't confront, you just note it. That's what makes people nervous around you. Your silence isn't weakness, it's observation. You're scanning every word, every inconsistency, every nervous twitch they think they hid well. They leave the conversation thinking they got away with something until life starts reflecting back that they didn't. Because when you see through people, the universe starts adjusting accordingly. Imagine someone thinking they fooled you while you already moved 3 steps ahead based on what they didn't say. You don't need to catch them in the act. You catch the energy, and that knowing, it's unshakable. They can smile, swear on everything, fake tears if they want, but your system doesn't rely on theatrics. You don't just listen to words, you listen to tone, to patterns, to timing, and when something doesn't align, it's over. Not because you called them out, but because you disconnected. That's why they warn others about you. Be careful around them. They're sharp, but what they really mean is they can't be lied to. You've mastered the power of silent discernment. You don't need to expose anyone. Life does that for you eventually. You just sit back, observe, and let truth do what it always does, reveal itself. They lied out loud, but your instincts heard the truth whispering beneath it. You were never fooled, just patient, and now they know. Number 12. You made smart look weak because you backed yours with integrity. Without integrity, intelligence is just a weapon in the hands of a coward. For too long, the world clapped for clever manipulators, people who twisted words, bent facts, and used their intellect to dominate rooms instead of uplift them. They called it brilliance. They called it leadership. But you? You walked in with a different kind of sharpness, one wrapped in honesty, and suddenly the masks started slipping. You didn't just redefine what smart looks like, you redefined what strength feels like. You didn't throw your intelligence around like a weapon, you didn't try to sound right, you chose to be real. You used your wisdom to bring clarity, not confusion. You guided instead of gaslighted. And the contrast between you and the so-called smartest people in the room, it couldn't be ignored. Because while they controlled conversations, you changed people, and now the world is catching on. Imagine someone standing calmly in the middle of chaos and exposing everyone just by choosing truth over tricks. You've made people realize something dangerous, that intelligence isn't rare. Integrity is, and when the two meet in one person, it rattles every manipulator in the room. Because you've made it clear, being articulate isn't impressive when it's used to deceive. Being clever doesn't mean much if it leads others into confusion. You proved that true brilliance isn't measured by how many people you can outwit. It's measured by how many people you can free. That's why the gossip about you feels different now. It's not rooted in jealousy alone, it's rooted in shame. Because you made the manipulators look small without even calling them out. You didn't play their game. You brought a whole new standard, and they couldn't reach it. And when people see you, they start rethinking everything they thought was powerful. You forced a reckoning. You didn't scream for respect. You walked in truth and let the results speak for themselves. They used their mind to manipulate. You used yours to heal. That's why you won without ever keeping score. And now they're realizing that the real threat is a mind like yours, backed by a heart they can't corrupt. Number 13, your name isn't just known, it's a red flag for fakes. You didn't burn bridges, you lit up every lie hiding on the other side. Your name doesn't come up in gossip the way it used to. Now it gets mentioned with a warning tone. Be careful with that one. They're sharp, not sharp like arrogant, sharp like surgical. You became the kind of person people study before they approach. Not out of admiration, but out of fear. Not because you're cruel, but because you're correct. And in a world full of illusion, that kind of clarity is terrifying. You don't expose people, you stand still, and the truth exposes itself through your presence. You don't even have to open your mouth anymore. Just walking into a space shifts the energy. The performers start adjusting, the manipulators get quiet, the liars rehearse, because they know if they slip, you'll catch it. Not because you're looking for it, but because you can't unsee it. You've trained your mind to catch inconsistencies before they land. You spot setups from across the room. You sense fake smiles the way others sense smoke before fire. Imagine being so aware that your silence becomes a spotlight, exposing everything they tried to hide. That's the level you're on now. You became the mirror no one asked for, but everyone fears. The type of person whose presence alone makes people reconsider their next sentence. They don't joke the same around you. They don't lie the same. They don't manipulate with ease anymore because you've made it dangerous to be dishonest. You don't threaten people. You unravel them just by staying calm, just by listening, just by noticing what they hope no one sees. You're not feared for being aggressive. You're feared for being accurate. You don't react, you reveal. You don't argue, you understand too much. And that's why the stories about you have changed. Your name is a signal, a boundary, a reminder that not everyone's asleep, not everyone's easily played. You became the caution label for every fake person in the room. They used to underestimate you. Now they overthink before they speak in your presence. Because once you've been seen by a mind like yours, there's no hiding again. Number 14. They thought you were just smart. Now they're scrambling because you can't be controlled. You were never dangerous because you knew too much. You were dangerous because you couldn't be owned. You didn't sign up to be the problem. You weren't trying to shake the system. You just saw through it and refused to play along. That's what made you a threat. Not your intellect, but your independence. Because in a world built on compliance, a clear mind is seen as rebellion. And you? You didn't just see the cracks in the system. You exposed the entire illusion without saying a word. You're not a conspiracy. You're a confirmation. They don't fear your knowledge. They fear your clarity. You're not distracted. You're not confused. You don't fall for titles, trends, or emotional tricks. You know when you're being played. And worse, for them, you know how to respond without making a scene. That's why they label you difficult, intimidating, or too much. Because they couldn't bribe you with approval, couldn't flatter you into silence, couldn't box you into their agenda. Imagine someone so mentally free, every lie collapses when they enter the room. You became that, not because you tried to, but because your truth had weight. You speak, and people pause, not out of respect, but out of realization. You dismantle control with calm insight. You reject manipulation, not with anger, but with accuracy. And that's what makes you lethal to any structure built on deception. You don't just think critically, you see critically. You don't just read between the lines, you see through the page entirely. You're the glitch in the simulation, the system breaker, the one who walks in wisdom while others play pretend. That's why they whisper your name like a warning, because they know this isn't just intelligence, this is activation. You were never just informed, you're awake. And once someone wakes up, they can't be programmed again. They can gossip, they can mock, but they can't undo the fact that you see what they've spent years hiding. So let them talk, let them spin stories and send out warnings, because all they're really doing is confirming that you're the one they couldn't manipulate, distract, or contain. And that, chosen one, is the greatest threat of all. And now, as the dust settles, one thing is clear. You were never just smart. You were the shift they never saw coming. Your mind didn't just expose people, it exposed patterns, systems, and agendas designed to keep everyone asleep. But you stayed awake. You stayed aligned. And now the world can't unsee what your presence revealed. Keep walking in truth, quiet, clear, and untouchable. If this message spoke to your soul, like this video, subscribe for more, and drop the number 77 in the comments to claim your clarity. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to remember who they are.